Hello, and welcome to Movies That Were Almost Good. So, even though this is the first video on my channel, I'm already going to break my own rules because it's my channel and I can do that. Instead of talking about a movie, we're going to be talking about an episode of television. One that I think has got a lot of people's hackles raised in the last couple days. We'll be talking about The Bells, episode 5 of season 8 of Game of Thrones. And like I said, this is a pretty controversial episode. Some people think it's horrible. Some people think it's great. Actually, I haven't really seen many people who think it's great. I think most people think it's either horrible or just okay. I think our expectations were also kind of screwed with a little bit. Emilia Clarke said this was the best episode of the season, and I think that's highly debatable. So far, my favorite episode of the season has been episode 2, and that's kind of sad because that was mostly people sitting around talking. I think the conversations have always been some of the best parts of Game of Thrones, and I wish we had gotten more of that this episode. But first, I want to talk about what I think makes this episode actually pretty good. I think it's a really, really beautiful episode. Oh my goodness. I think the flight scenes in this episode are the best that they've looked in the series. I also think it was really, really cool to finally see the full destructive power of a dragon. On civilians. We've seen Dany, we saw it a little bit last season episode 4 actually, of Dany using a dragon in war. But there was something different about this episode, man. Like, she was just wiping people out. She was dropping firebombs, and I was honestly a little shocked by it. Also, something that I find just amazing, this is mostly for me, and my costume design heart. Dany's outfit this episode was fantastic. Frankly, I think Tyrion should have known that Dany was going to pull a stunt because she was in her stunt queen outfit. So, really, is it surprising that Dany acted the way she did? I personally don't think so. I also think the score of the season has just really been gorgeous. I think Game of Thrones has always had a fantastic score, but there are very few songs that stand out to me, like The Light of the Seven from The Winds of Winter or the Night King's theme. And I really think the score this season has just been fantastic. So those are like some really good things about this episode and about the season that I've really enjoyed. I guess mostly this season, what I've kind of struggled with is the writing and the pacing. And really, I don't so much mind the writing, it's more the pacing. I personally think the season just should have been longer. I think we needed more space to breathe. I think we really needed to feel all the character deaths from episode 3. I think we should have been able to feel Varys' death this episode, and we didn't really get a chance. I feel like they didn't give enough time to Dany's kind of descent. If I'm going to buy that Dany is mad, and first let me say that I am pro Dark Dany. I'm a Daenerys stan, actually. I've been Team Targaryen forever. Since the first season, I have loved Daenerys, and she was my pick for the Iron Throne, mainly because I read the books, I knew what happened to Robb, and I've just never been a Stannis fan, and Renly really didn't have a chance, poor thing. So Dany was always kind of my choice, and I could see hints of her maybe not making the best decisions, maybe being just a little too violent with her enemies. But to me, that does not make someone mad. I think that that's a skewed moral code, and it was really obvious that with more correction, that with having good people around her, Dany was actually super effective. I think if we had had more time to feel certain characters' deaths, I would buy Dany descending into grief a little bit more. If we just had that breathing room. But again, I don't quite see madness specifically in this episode because we're talking about the bells. And watching kind of after the episode, they say that Dany sees the Red Keep and that's what triggers her. I just don't buy that. I really don't. I feel like if it had been the Red Keep that really triggered Dany, then I feel like she would have attacked the Red Keep and not just the innocent citizens of King's Landing. Now, mind you, I am very much pro-burning of King's Landing. I think if Dany didn't do it, Cersei needed to do it. Someone needed to do it. I've hated King's Landing forever. I was glad to see it finally go up in smoke. I just don't agree with the execution. And I really sat down, thought about this, and really kind of mapped out for myself what to me makes more sense. And again, this is just to me. Maybe you're like, Marilyn, it doesn't matter. This is what they put on television. So that's that. And I get that. But I think it's fun to just kind of brainstorm and see, hey, what could have been done differently with this episode? So for me, I think what would make me buy Dany suddenly burning the citizens, I think it needed to be a really specific sequence of events, or maybe a slight variation on this sequence. But I think that what I'm going to describe to you would just lay it out better to me. So I think killing Rhaegal in episode 4 was a mistake. I feel the death of Dany's child should have happened in episode 5. And that would have been a much more believable trigger for Dany to just go ham. And here's how I kind of envisioned it happening. So let's pause and let me set the scene. Let's let Dany attack King's Landing with both of her dragons, and that fiery maelstrom that we saw in this episode that was so beautiful and so amazing. She blows out the fleet. She blows out the scorpions on the walls. She blows out the Golden Company, which we're not even going to talk about how much of a waste the Golden Company were. What was the point of having them and not just having Lannister soldiers? Anyway, Dany handles King's Landing's forces the same way that she handled them in the episode. She settles down with her dragon, lands Drogon, and let's have Rhaegal still flying overhead. You know, Jon's not on Rhaegal. That's really easily explained because Dany and Jon are at odds. And at the end of the day, the dragons are Dany's children, not Jon's. So Jon chooses to go in on the ground instead of flying on Rhaegal. That to me is very easily explained. Dany sits down. She's trying to catch her breath. There's the soot on her face. Amelia's really fantastic facial expressions. She's been super expressive this season, and I've really enjoyed it. And I don't know why, but in my head, I see Tyrion over at a vantage point where he and Dany can make eye contact. And he's looking at her and he's like, okay, it's over. It's done. They're going to ring the bells and we're going to win and we're all going to go home and you're not going to burn all these people. And Dany just kind of looks at him and she's like, okay, I did what I came here to do. It's over. It's done. The bells ring. And I really think the bells weren't used to the effect they could have been for an episode titled The Bells. I really think we could have lingered on them just a little bit longer. So Daenerys settles back. We hear the bells. They're ringing. There's that beautiful... I think we even close out the score for a little bit and just have the noise of the bells and Daenerys is breathing. And then just when we think it's over... snap, Rhaegal is shot out of the sky by a scorpion hidden in the city. And we linger on the sound of the bells, and that finally they stop ringing when Rhaegal hits the ground. I think we flash to Tyrion and we see this just absolutely distraught look on his face because Tyrion knows. He knows that that's it. That's Dany's breaking point. And that's when she flies to the Red Keep. I think that was the mistake of this episode. I feel like if Dany's issue was being triggered by the Red Keep, why didn't she go to the Red Keep first and then burn the city? Why did she burn the city for? I don't know. Anyway, she goes to the Red Keep, and I was really missing a face-to-face with Cersei in this episode, or a dragon to Cersei in this episode. I thought Cersei's death was super underwhelming. I don't think someone who's as bad a bitch as Cersei needed to die from failing infrastructure. I think Cersei needed to burn. If we're not going to do the Valancourt prophecy, we're not going to have Jaime strangle Cersei, then it needed to be Dany and some dragon fire. And I think Dany flies up to that window where Cersei loves to chill with her little glass of wine. And Dany looks at her, and Cersei looks at Dany, and I don't think Cersei needs to be shook. I don't think she sheds a tear. I think she looks at Dany, and she lifts her wine glass, and she tips it to Dany, because Cersei has played the Game of Thrones her whole life. She's the one who said that quote, way back when you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die. Cersei's realizing this is the first time she's lost. And now Dany's the winner. And then Cersei goes up in Dragonflame. And to me, that's a fitting end for Cersei, that her crying in Jaime's arms being crushed by a building. I think Cersei needed to go out as a bad bitch because she lived as a bad bitch. And that needs to be that, you know? And then from then on, Dany maybe stops. She lands on the Red Keep and she's looking out around and she hears the voices of the people screaming, calling her a monster, calling her the Mad Queen, calling her evil, saying, hey, we rung the bells. Why'd you kill Cersei? And I think that's what triggers Dany, that moment, because it was set up so perfectly in her conversation with Jon to have Dany say, I have no love here. All I have is fear. So let it be fear. To look down and to have that experience of people hating her, people being terrified of her. And that's what makes her go ham and fly over it and burn the innocent. My other issue with this episode was the presence of Arya. Not that I don't love Arya, because I actually really, really love her. I've loved her story. I've loved her journey. But I personally don't think Arya really served a purpose in this episode. I know a lot of people have said, oh, she's the incarnation of death. That's her purpose in this episode. I still don't buy it. I feel like if Arya kills Daenerys, I don't know if I like that ending for either of those characters. I personally think it should be Jon that kills Daenerys, and I personally think it should have been Jon that we followed this entire episode, watching him deal with the carnage, watching him try to save people. We got a few flashes of that, but for the most part, Jon was really sidelined this episode. I feel like if we're setting up a collision between Jon and Daenerys, then this episode should have really focused on Jon and Daenerys to prepare us for that collision. I mean, how many lines did Kit really have? Not many. And it's sad because we've seen that Kit can do those really fantastic tracking shots where he's got lots of action and there's a whole bunch going on and he's just trying to exist and survive. I feel like another one of those scenes to really close out his character and show his allegiances shifting, I think that would have been really interesting. I also would have liked more focusing on Dany. I know we were focusing on the destruction and the deaths of all the women and children because we're really painting Dany to be the villain. I get it. But I would have loved to see her face, especially because Emilia has been doing these really beautiful, expressive... She's making really great choices as an actress, I think. And she's got this way of just making Dany's eyes look absolutely hollow, which is hilarious because Emilia is such a sweet, bubbly looking person. She makes Dany look really menacing in those scenes. And I would have loved to have seen more of that expressive acting, or to give Emilia a chance to really showcase just how far Dany falls, how total this change is. And we didn't really see that. We just kind of saw Drogon flying overhead and assumed that Dany looks crazy up there. But yeah, those are kind of my really big points for this episode. Things that I think could have changed to make this episode just a little bit more effective. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments if there were any major changes you would have made to this season or to this specific episode. I think it's just those few things. Yeah. Adding more space, a little bit more room for the actors to kind of flex, more of those conversations, more space for deaths to land with us. I think I would have enjoyed that just a little bit more. All in all, this is movies that were almost good, and I hope to hear from you guys in the comment section. Subscribe if you want to. Thanks.